Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind. What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 64 of the Rewind. Another week is upon us, and that means it's time to sit back, relax, and catch up on all the goings on in the community surrounding Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, the upcoming MMO RPG by Visionary Realms. So if you're looking to connect with other fans who are looking for a challenging social MMO, or you just want to keep up with the latest news and notes from Visionary Realms, then you've come to the right place, and welcome. Now, I can't do this alone, so I turn to the guy who gives Archai their reputation for their love of celebration and their jovial spirit. I turn to my co-host, Desrin. How are you doing, man?
Oh, well, that's such a funny intro. I mean, I don't know what Archai you're talking about, but
that's
I
the
mean,
lore
you're
of
the
the
lore
Archai.
guy. You should know this.
That's exactly right, and that's where I'm coming from. If you read the lore of the Archai, they talk about their love of celebration. Like, basically, they're always partying, right? Like, they're basically always having a kegger. They're always, like, you know, having some sort of rave going on. You think of the light coming from inside them, you know? Like, imagine an Archai rave, what that would be like.
Yeah, they just all dance in a dark room. That's an Archai rave.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Well, I definitely need to consult you about that lore a little more and develop my character. But no, I've been doing great, man. This week's been a really exciting one, at least in the world of MMOs. I've been pretty occupied with the recent beta of New World.
Nice.
Probably, putting more hours into it than I should. But because of that, though, one kind of cool thing in real life, I guess, is I'm getting to play that beta with a very old friend of mine, from way back when I was in high school. I didn't go to high school with him, but his brother was one of my teachers, the teacher I got along with the most. And so through him, I got to know both of them, and playing New World with them has been really fun, and we're getting to catch up, and it's just really, really nice to have that that's kind of what the MMOs are about. You know, we're staying in touch, and it's social. It's fantastic. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with me.
That's cool, man. Yeah, you know, it's sort of a rare thing these days that an MMO works. So, you know, works to bring you together with somebody or bring back an old friend. I've got a friend from Calgary where I grew up, and we played EverQuest together, and he doesn't know about Pantheon yet. I've sort of mentioned it sort of in casual conversation, like, hey, are you following any new MMOs? And he's like, yeah, no, I wait till, he's like, of most people's mind, where wait till they get closer to launch and then he'll get interested, right? So he's sort of just sort of waiting on everything. He's not really paying attention to anything. And I think when Pantheon gets closer, I'll be like, hey, guess what? If I kind of do a podcast about this game, if you ever want to play an MMO like we used to, then you should definitely jump in. So it's kind of cool, these old friendships that come back to
good strategy there too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So right on, man. Glad to hear you're doing well. Let's thank the adventuring party for the week, as we do. And these are all folks who donated during the premiere on YouTube last week. So first up, we have Jadica on the Archai Wizard. We have our friend Crowsinger on the Elf Druid. We have Jason, always on the Scar Beard Lord. And we have Ziplocks on the Dark Mirror Rogue, and Sparrow on the Dwarf Ranger, and Bounty Coat on the Human Wizard. So, as always, thank you to everyone who supports the show. If you want to do so during the premiere, we have the super chat enabled, so you can donate whatever you like. Of course, it's completely not required in any way, shape, or form. Everybody is welcome. The show will always be free to everybody, no matter what. I've talked about it before about setting up a Patreon, and that's still, it's still in the works. It's just one of those things that I really want to get right before I embark on it. Yeah. So it's something that I feel like this way is, very casual and allows people to, whether they want to donate or not, that's completely within their control. So I like that flexibility with it too. So again, thank you so much. We couldn't do the show, without your support, and not financial. I mean, more in terms of, just saying you like it and sort of participating. So that's what it's all about. Yeah. So yeah, whew, long way of saying, Des, are you ready to get the show on the road this week?
Yeah, man, let's do this.
This week in Visionary Realms News and Notes. Okay, so for official stuff from VR, we didn't have too much this week, but we did have a quick announcement on Twitter that if you were going to make a VIP pledge, if you do it before July 29th, then you get to participate in the next upcoming pre-alpha test. It's a 31-hour testing session that's taking place between July 31st and August 1st, which is like, what, next week, right? So
yeah, just a week ago.
Yeah, and if you want to get in on that, you have to get your butt in gear though, and you gotta do that pledge. Now, of course, that's not to be taken lightly. You know, that's a significant commitment, and of course, understandable that not everybody's going to do that. But I love that they announced this. Like, I don't think that they've. Correct me if I'm wrong, Des, but I recall one time I think where they did this before, or maybe it was a different thing, but I love that they're announcing like these the VIP playtesting sessions, which are usually sort of NDA, in the realm of NDA, right? So it's very cool.
Yeah, I think it's really good just to let everyone know, whether or not you're a VIP champion or whatever, just watching the project, that hey, stuff is going on, and sometimes they even talk about like what's being tested, which is kind of cool. But I really thought it was kind of interesting how they kind of did it this time. They did the whole like they're bandits taking foothold in the forest, and they had this cool little screenshot, which was just a really kind of unique, quick way of saying, hey, we're doing some testing and also giving something to even the non-testers, even just in the form of a screenshot. A pretty good looking screenshot too.
a very good looking screenshot. I agree. It sort of entices you, right? You're like, huh, so this is what it's going to look like, when I get in there. And that's kind of interesting. And I agree. It's a different way of going about showcasing the work a little bit. And also, of course, trying to bring in new pledges. And if you've already pledged to a certain level, you can, of course, always, upgrade that to a VIP level. And I just think I think it's an interesting way of going about it. And of course, you're going to see some good feedback. You're going to see some negative feedback. I saw some comments that were like, oh, what, I have to pay $1,000 for a 30-hour play session. You're just not looking at it the right way.
I saw that too.
Yeah. And that's going to happen, right? It's not completely surprising to hear that kind of thing. But the thing is that, this is pre-alpha testing, and this is being a VIP comes along with other benefits other than just that. There's also the VIP Discord. There's other things that are listed on the pledge page. When you go there to check it out, you'll see it's a lot more than that. But a 30-hour play test is a pretty fun thing. I know, everybody. Yeah. I've been, we've talked about our pre-alpha testing experiences before, and I'm super excited for this one. I didn't burn the midnight oil last time. I didn't pull the all-nighter. I'm kind of thinking about it this time. Maybe we'll see.
Oh,
I don't know.
We'll see. I was kind of laughing because the only thing better than a 30-hour testing session is a 31-hour testing session. I thought it was just so funny that they just added that extra hour. Well, they're funny guys over there at VR.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited about the testing session. I went pretty hard last time as well. So I don't know. I might be the opposite this time, honestly. Yeah,
but take it a little easier this time.
Yeah, really cool stuff. Happy it's happening. Happy that everyone gets to know about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the most thing for me, is that it's out there. It's public knowledge. It's not NDA stuff. So I think it's a cool idea. Anyway, so moving on to our Twitter question. Just one Twitter question for this week for this section. So it was a question that was a little bit confusing, and we'll try and clarify it here. So the question was, what matters most, sounds or immersion, and why? And then Kilson went on to clarify it a little bit. Would you rather remove all other forms of immersion and just focus on sound, or would you rather remove sound completely? So I'll clarify the best response I saw to sort of sort this out, and I think they figured it out a little bit, was from Ashley. She goes by Scriptomancy on Twitter. She said, I'm not sure I understand the question. She says, do you mean an immersion versus sound systems, things like level dings, as opposed to like environmental or combat sounds? Because immersion is some of the many parts and sound is one of those parts. So I don't really know how to compare them. She goes on to say, unless you're saying immersion is like this umbrella that many people are standing under, and one of those people is sound. Are you asking would I rather stand under the umbrella with everyone else, but sound has to go, or stand with sound alone and without an umbrella? And then Kilson, like I said, clarified it. Would you rather remove all other immersion, just focus on sounds, or remove sound? And she says, I think I'd remove sound for sure, because removing all other forms of immersion would be too much of a loss. So, yeah. Did you understand this question when you first read it? Did you sort of get it?
Well, okay. I know the context of these is just Kilson's just throwing funny stuff out. Like he just wants people to, throw their lot in and just kind of have a good time with the question. So starting from the beginning of, hey, I'm not taking this seriously. It makes me, I don't know. I think it helps me understand just because I'm not looking to formulate a nice response, as nice as Ashley's response was. I mean, I actually love the metaphor there, but I just wasn't too bad. It's just like either or. Just think about it. He could have explained immersion better, maybe, but no big deal.
Yeah, and that was my take too. But what I like what you're saying about not taking it seriously is probably the right course, right? They're not making an MMO that's just sounds, right? They're not removing graphics and like story and like all the other aspects of immersion, that things that bring you to a state of immersion. That's not the idea, of course. It's just a thought experiment, I guess you would say. Exactly. The next one's from Walking Waste, and I like their response too. They said, to me, the music and ambient noises within a game add a lot to immersion. If you shut off all game sounds and music and you play your own music or your sounds and it doesn't match the aesthetic, it pulls from their immersion. So his answer is sounds, which of course, makes a lot of sense. I have never understood how people can like play an MMO that's set in like, think about playing like, Lord of the Rings online, and it's got this beautiful, and the graphics and Lord of the Rings themes are everywhere, and the feel, and you're playing like death metal in the background. I've never been able to like reconcile those two things. So
on that note, actually, Derek, I have a confession.
Oh no.
Yeah, I do that.
Really?
I do that, man. I will completely enjoy a game soundtrack. It's actually, I love soundtracks, scores, instrumental, classical. I still really love that. But I do find myself, the more familiar I am with a game, the more I'm okay with maybe turning the music off and turning my own Spotify on. And one of my favorite things, and this is maybe going a little bit outside of the MMO box, but I really enjoy playing action games, especially like shooters or like ARPGs with extremely ironically happy music.
Really?
Clearing a hallway and you've got like just really like pleasant. It just, I don't know. There's something surreal about that experience that cracks me up. And I do it probably more often than I should, but I do still enjoy the music of a game. There's something about that.
I've right now, all I can see is you playing like Counter-Strike Go with like REM playing in the background of like Shiny Happy People or something. Like people have it. Yep, yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I will absolutely do that.
Wow. That is so different from the way I play games. I find that very interesting. And what do you people who are here for the premiere and chat, like what do you do? Are you listen to the game music, or you play your own Spotify list? Because I think that's very different brains that interpret these things a different way.
Well, I definitely respect either opinion, and I'll be on both of your sides, I promise. But please, someone please be on my side.
I guarantee there's somebody on your side. You know what it reminds me of? Like there's so many movies that they show like the sort of stereotype nerd gamer right at their computer, and they've got like Nine Inch Nails playing while they're killing people in Quake, and mom's yelling downstairs, like that sort of scene. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it just feeds that stereotype. But hey, whatever suits you, man, whatever floats your boat, go for it. I have no problem with that. The next response here was from Be More Gaming, who we featured last week too. Another good response. They said, I'm somewhat of an audiophile, so I definitely pick sounds. But sounds can also be your worst enemy if they're done poorly. Unnecessary repeating sounds like grunts or spells that don't have any variance can be very fatiguing on the ears and cheapen the whole experience. It's so true, right? So true.
100% agree.
It's very difficult to listen to poorly made sound for a long time. And I'm not talking about music, like he's talking about the noises of the game. And oh man, sometimes it blows me away that you can play a game and you hear a sound and you're like, did they not test this? Did they not listen to this ahead of time? It is so grating sometimes, but it's a good point.
Yeah.
The next one was from Internal Movie, and they said, well, like others say, you can't have one without the other, but you can take away visual immersion and still have immersive sound. Sort of like listening to nature or thunderstorms, but having your eyes closed. So if the sound is good, it aids the immersion. So sound. And that visual is probably, if I was to sort of think of it like a scene like that, that's how I would describe it too, because there is a lot to be said for if you can close your eyes and the graphics can fall away and you're still in this place, like you're still in that sort of setting. I think that really speaks volumes.
Yeah, really cathartic. I love that response.
Mm-hmm. Next one is from Tyson, and they said, immersion, first and foremost. Arguments can be had on sound being a part of immersion. However, I believe immersion comes to the forefront before sound. Sound enhances immersion. It doesn't necessarily make it. So they're saying graphics and story and all the other components. What makes immersion is all these different things. And they're saying that sound can help that, but it doesn't complete it. It's not the entirety.
Yeah,
which makes sense. The next one's from Frank, and they said, sound is much more effective, I believe. You can have the grandest hall with lighting and costume design, but if you meet the regal queen with dueling banjos playing in the background, you might assume the king is her brother and she's missing some teeth. That's so good. That's so good. When it doesn't match, right? When the sound design doesn't match the graphical design or the setting and the theme. I was playing a game the other day, and I'll tell you, this is an example of the opposite of that. I was playing a remake of the Warlock of Firetop Mountain on the Switch. That's like a super old fighting fantasy game from the Choose Your Own Adventure kind of books back in the late 70s, right? They redone them. There's a company, Tin Man Games, I think, makes them on the Switch. And I'm playing it. It's a good game. It's fun, whatever. And there's this one part where you walk into this training room. It's like an orc training room. And when you walk in, this song starts playing. And I don't know if you know from Game of Thrones, when Jason Momoa is giving his speech to the Dothraki, and it's this guttural, very uplifting, powerful speech. It's basically that, but set to music. And you walk into this room and that's what you hear. And it was I just sat there for 10 minutes what is this? This is so it was cool, but it was also completely took me out of it, but it was jarring a little bit, I guess.
A little jarring, yeah.
Yeah. I had to actually look it up. I was oh, what? I got to find where they got this from. And I Googled it, and it came from Battle Bards, which is a site that does a bunch of music and stuff like that. It was very, very cool. But it did kind of in the moment sort of sets you back a little bit. Very cool.
Yeah.
The next one's from Cyril Amante, and they said, sounds don't invoke immersion. It's just sounds that don't invoke immersion is pointless noise. Immersion without sound can be done, and it has been done. Immersion is not always the most important thing in a game, but in an RPG, it should be. So, yeah, what do you think about that one?
That last point there has some relevance. This kind of goes along with the genre of games. I would group a lot of things together here. The games that don't take themselves seriously and kind of embrace the fourth wall. I see games like Call of Duty Warzone, for example. Like, it's not trying to get you to be immersed in the game. It's trying to get you to have fun. And sometimes there's things that kind of reach through the screen, through the fourth wall, to just kind of help you enjoy it. But it's never really meant to be immersive. And so I think of that when I think of games that don't need to be immersive, because a lot of people really enjoy that. So but for RPGs, 100% agree. Like, you're role playing, you're playing a role. Yeah. You need to be immersed to play a role. So 100% agree with that. Really, really good point, actually.
Yeah, I agree. The next one's from Thev Sonata, and they said, whatever it is, make sure it has subtitles. Environmental subs helps me like you couldn't imagine. Now, we had a big discussion on this on Discord, actually, talking about subtitles. It was kind of interesting, and I think it relates to this because you realize, how important sound design is for us, when we have the ability to appreciate it. But, if you're hearing impaired, if you're unable to, or even your hearing is damaged, or you just don't hear as well, subtitles are a huge thing, right? And I would never not want subtitles to be in the game. When we were talking on Discord, I said, I turn them off, right? I absolutely have to. It's the first thing I go into the options and I turn them off because I find them distracting. They actually break my immersion a little bit, because if it's a really nice cutscene or if there's some speech going on, I want to listen to the speech. I want to hear the inflection in how the characters are talking. I want to hear the nuance in their voice, and subtitles kind of take that away from me. So what do you do with subtitles? Do you use them or do you leave them off?
Oh man. Well, so this is really fun. Being someone that is vision impaired, I don't use subtitles because I find myself basically having to put my face to a screen to read them, which takes me away from listening to them, which is something I can do. But any kind of like accessibility thing like this, I'm going to be all for. I feel like if they have this in mind early on, it's easier to implement well. It's not as easy to implement later down the line when they're like, oh, we should probably have subtitles for our ambient sounds and stuff like that. So definitely something good to bring up. I am kind of waiting. I'm hoping JJ's here for the premiere so that we can have like a subs versus dubs discussion. Not argument.
Interesting.
There are a lot of folks have strong feelings about that, but I think as far as displaying it in game, I think it's a no-brainer. It should definitely be there, or at least any important sounds should be subbed. But yes, I will turn that off.
Sometimes I forget, and then I start playing, and I'm like, because you can't go back, right? You can't like stop the intro to turn the subtitles off. It's annoying. So it's one of those little things. And then the last response here comes from Gast, and they said, a game can sound good without being immersive, but a game cannot be immersive without good sound. So I like that. Short, sweet, simple. And that kind of goes to, my overall thoughts on this. And Des, I'll ask you what yours are. But, some of my favorite games of all time, I look at my lists of like the top 10 games I've ever played, and almost all of them have really good sound design. Sound design for me is one of those absolute musts, and I never turn the game sound off. I never turn the music off. So I think about when I think about music is one thing, sound design's another. And there is a part here that I kind of can get behind about it being detracting. Because when you have let's say you're opening your inventory, and it makes that like ruffling, like a leather bag opening, that's important. If it was like a sound that was just like a generic like UI, like a ding, and Ashley said it right at the start, leveling up dings, those aren't part of the world. That's not like an actual sound from the world. It doesn't emanate from anywhere other than, it's a user interface sound, right? That kind of stuff does kind of, I would rather not have that stuff. If you can't make it sound like it's actually happening, I wouldn't put it in the game. So
Yep.
I think that some people probably like it though, because it's more about feedback. It's more like, I just want to know I did something, right? But this one was a little tricky. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, sound isn't just music. It's not just the general soundscape of a place. It is those additional UI sounds, specific game sounds. I would ask anyone listening to immediately imagine the sound of picking up a rupee in Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Great example.
And you're going to immediately remember. You probably remember the sound of breaking the clay pots. There's so many extremely noticeable sounds because our brains are going to tie that sound so good to that experience that we have. It's a massive bit of nostalgia, just as powerful as any other sense, I think. So not only do the sounds have to be good and realistic, but sometimes if they're so realistic, they can be forgetful because our brains are just thinking, oh, it's just what I hear on a normal day-to-day basis. It's forgettable. So the proper balance, I believe, is sounds that are like memorable, that fit the setting, but also realistic enough, or they suit the setting enough that it's not immediately obvious. So we're not suddenly distracted by this particular sound, but it is kind of carving a memory into our brains. So good sound designers they're gonna hone in that specific set to make a game absolutely come alive and stick with you for years and years and years. And I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that Chris has got like someone in the works that he's just like waiting to get on the team to make that happen. Because if I'm honest right now, sound is one of my least favorite things about Pantheon. And so to try to wrap it around here, I like the music. I think the music already has a bit of nostalgia factor, but the sounds of combat, while there are a few noticeable sounds, they still don't quite fit the game to me. They don't quite fit the modern standard either, in my opinion. And so when we're talking about sound and immersion, that's one of those things that I really hope changes, just to drive in that little bit of extra immersion. If they keep the current sounds, I'm not going to be upset or anything, but it is definitely something I could see improving from all this feedback, hopefully.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Go back. I would encourage everybody to go back and watch some of the dev streams they've done where they're out just sort of wandering around in the world, and you hear the birds chirping in the background.
That's good.
Really, yeah, and that's interesting because I wasn't sure if that's what you were referring to. So, are you talking about like the noises, like the combat sounds,
Yeah, what we've got for combat sounds, so far what I've heard from the UI, the sounds that are good would be like the perception ping is really noticeable.
Yes, that's a great example.
That's really good. But a lot of the other sounds, like I feel like maybe they're stock sounds that they got somewhere, and they didn't actually like Foley themselves,
Yeah.
So like that's why I kind of think that they're going to get improved, but because the sounds that they have created are quite good. So,
interesting. Yeah. I think it's something when we do the next playtest here, it's something that's gonna be on my mind maybe a little more now. I'm gonna be definitely listening to it.
Hope you don't notice it so much it takes away from your experience, but yeah, it's a big deal to me.
Interesting. Wow, that's cool. That's cool. Very cool opinion. All right, and that's it for VR news and notes. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about.
All right, time for this week's community discussions. So pulling from forums elsewhere on the internet if we can. The first thing that we've already always got every time she releases something, got to give a nice shout out to our favorite community Corvid Crow Singer for her latest fan fiction contribution. It is called In the Sway of Storms, Chapter 5, Interlude. She's also included an awesome new piece of artwork to go along with that. Looks like that's titled Eowyn's Flight. And I thought gosh, I thought that was really, really neat. I'm so glad she's including her art with it. Like, it's so awesome. We very much appreciate that.
She posted that picture on Twitter. I think it's the one with the moons, if that's the one you're referring to. So she posted that on Twitter, and I gave her kudos because she included the crack in one of the moons, which JN mentioned in one of the last VIP roundtables. He said one of the moons has a crack in it, and I noticed it. I was like, wow. So I was like, somebody's paying attention. So kudos to you, Crow.
Yeah, really good stuff, man. As far as community discussion, as on the discussion side, was a little light this week, so I kind of had to rove the forums a bit. So if you guys don't, post on the forums, I need more material, please. but no, I did find a fairly recent, last few weeks topic that I kind of dug up. It was by user Tai Chang, I believe. So this thread, it's kind of devolved into an argument about multi-boxing. So I'm going to try to, leave that out. But in between that, they did bring up a topic that I found particularly relevant lately, which is mentoring. Specifically, he's asking if Pantheon plans to have a mentoring system like EverQuest 2. So avoiding the whole back and forth regarding the multi-boxing, I was just going to put a few responses where people gave their thoughts on mentoring, and we could kind of chat about it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So right off the bat, we have, I thought I'd save the best for first here. So we've got Van Jens, who says, mentoring is just a way to carry noobs and let the higher level players profit.
Oh, geez. Oh, man.
I thought that was really, really interesting. Admittedly, I thought of a situation where people would power level and they would mentor down. And I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
A bit rash on the delivery, but yeah. But Tai Chang did respond to that, saying, now, this was pretty good. So mentoring is, in my humble opinion, just a way to not punish players who want to go and level faster and play harder than their friends. So that when your friends are, say, level 20 and you're level 50, you can go back and still hang out with them and not feel punished for wanting to play the game harder. I feel like this I feel like this is not about carrying noobs as much as it is about leaving a lane open to players to connect and play with friends who all play the game differently and at different paces.
Yeah.
I think that's almost exactly what I think. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because you get sometimes when the topic of mentoring comes up, you do have these two really diverse sort of views of it. Some people, it's either a power leveling mechanic that can be abused for, to the ends of the earth, right? Or it's this, utilitarian mechanic that allows people to, to help and to stay with their friends. And I think it's important that I think Vengeance's point here, and I, as much as the way, I don't like the way he says it necessarily, but I think the point is well taken that you don't want it to just be a power leveling mechanic that gets abused. You have to design it in a way that it isn't just carrying noobs for a little profit for the higher level player, right? So and we've seen mentoring done in games different ways, and I'm not an expert in mentoring by any means. I remember EQ2. I think Vanguard, and you know better than I do, but Vanguard had a good mentoring system, did it not?
It wasn't exactly a mentoring system. So no, I would say I would discount Vanguard, actually, as far as a mentoring system. There's a way to keep pace with your friends, but it was not a mentoring system.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't really remember about that, but and depending on how they do it, right? It's always depends on how you do it. So like, do you turn off experience? Does the person mentoring the lower level player, do you turn their experience off completely?
Yeah.
Do you make them ineffective in some way? So yeah, go ahead.
Right. Actually, on that note, Jobson kind of added an interesting balancing idea to that in his response that I saw here. So he said, mentoring's a great tool. I hope they find a way to add it in fairly early. I would be perfectly happy if all mentor XP was mastery only. So that's potentially one way that they could handle it. You know, maybe you don't get regular XP as the mentoring person, but maybe it helps your mastery in some way. There's a lot of ways I think they could balance that.
I thought that was a really, really good point, a really interesting idea. You know, and of course, there's always, you know, pros and cons to everything. But if it was like a mastery point, a way of gaining mastery points through like a mentoring system, it kind of thematically it kind of fits, right? You think about it that like I'm the mentor, I'm the one who's striving at a higher level, but I'm using that to help you at a lower level. So I'm would be gaining mastery points. I think there's something you could definitely do there. And what if it was like, this is even taking it to the next level, but like, what if mentoring was a mastery of its own? You know, like what if mentoring was a skill you could develop? Right?
Oh man. No, yeah, we could go anywhere with that.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, so Derek, I'm putting you on the spot here, but so what's the best way to learn something, Derek?
The best way to learn something is usually doing it. That's off the top of my head.
And then how do you master something?
By doing it. Yeah, or doing it over and over and over again.
well, so that's kind of like a common thing, though, is like if you can teach something, you probably know it really, really well, better than even someone that maybe has done it a lot. If you can teach a concept, it shows that you understand it, is kind of what I'm getting at. And so if we're thinking in like theoretical, maybe making this make as much sense as possible, yeah, it does kind of make sense that mentoring someone actually increases your mastery. But we can go a lot of ways with that. So, but yeah, I did want to kind of point out that Kilson did pop in a few times, addressing the other side of the thread. But he did reiterate a lot that, Pantheon is meant to encourage players to play together, to group up. And in several posts, he said that. So, and I feel that like reflects the general the general disposition that VR has. And so for that reason, I thought this was really like particularly relevant to me right now. And I hesitate to bring this up.
No, I think it's a good point.
I have been playing New World beta, like I said. And as often happens with a new game that releases, you start to see people progressing at different rates, which Tai Chang mentioned above. So I mentioned I got this real life friend, right? And I was really excited to play with him again. And we had enjoyed the preview a lot together, but we really don't get to play games together much. So this is really like the first time since the preview that we've really got to hang out, so to speak, even if it's digitally. And so being that this was kind of a special occasion, I was, happy to do it. But unfortunately, right as the beta launched, he got a bunch of real life stuff going on. And so he didn't have much time at all. And I had set aside a lot of time this week to enjoy the beta. And so for me, I've been like trying every possible way to hold myself back. I've even spent like probably 80% of my time in New World crafting, just trying not to out-level my friend, because they don't have any kind of mentoring. If I super pass him up, there's only a limited amount that we can play together and actually like experience the normal game, where I'm not just like clobbering stuff. And so I've really found myself wanting some kind of mentoring system, some kind of way for me to play at my pace and then mentor down to kind of help him or just play with him. I mean, I don't even need experience. I just want to, experience the game normally with my friend.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing, right? Like that's the whole point of this, is that it keeps people together. It keeps people bonded, because if you don't play together, you're just not gonna, these bonds, you have a bond with this person because you know them in real life, right? But if you're just meeting somebody and you're just sort of forming that bond in a social game, if you don't play together, you're not going to stay together. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
And when you get, it happens every time. People just have more free time than others. People play more than others, and that is how it is. So there has been lots of documented history of groups getting upset because they have an agreed, like, okay, we're going to all play at the same time. We're all going to stay in the same level range. And then somebody just happens to go ahead.
It never works.
It never works. It does not work. So you can agree till the cows come home, but unless you have a system that allows you to stay together, especially for a game like Pantheon, this is like, it's not a single player game where we're all just doing our own thing beside each other. This is a game where we have to do things together. And I desperately think that they've got to get this part has to be figured out. This is one of those, I think, essential elements of Pantheon.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. Like, and there's a lot of ways that they could tackle it. And I know it's probably a big ask for, something to have on release, but I do absolutely think it's important, especially having this recent experience where it's a new game and the disparity is just so obvious. It's I don't want to roll a separate character on a game launch to just play while my friend is playing, because then I'm not progressing my character, which is I want to experience this fresh new game or whatever. I don't want to have to divide my time just to make the game kind of work with my buddy.
Yeah,
I guess. And like there's a lot of solutions. I had a discussion earlier. Someone asked me like, oh, well, what do you think about like level scaling like ESO or Guild Wars 2? And
yeah.
I know a lot of people in this community are like, no. But that brings its own issues where you're technically leveling up, but you don't feel like you're getting stronger or whatever. Yeah. So I really do think an individual mentoring system is absolutely key. I know it's been mentioned by VR, but I would love it if at some point before release that they either talk about it more, talk about their plans, or maybe even, say we're getting it at some point. Because for me, having all these friends, I have several friends that are totally ready to come into Pantheon, but we all have different schedules. We all have different time allotments. And so I really want us all to just be able to enjoy the game together without having to do workarounds and, try to set up groups that just are never going to be able to stay together. So yeah. I've really wanted to bring this up though. Yeah.
It's a good discussion. And level scaling is absolutely not the answer in my opinion. Don't make the world change for us, right? Like put systems in that we can, that are individual to us, that affect our, experience, but the world is the world, and that doesn't change, and like that doesn't come down to our level. Like we have to modify it on our end to do something like this. Level scaling just drives me crazy in so many games. It just takes away so much from so many games for me. But
yep.
Really good discussion. And before we jump to the next segment, Des, I'm gonna poke the bear a little bit and say, when you were playing New World, did your video card explode at all?
You know what, Derek? It was starting to melt. I saw lava coming out of my computer, but nothing happened with my video card. Without getting into crazy stuff, there was some reporting on that, but it's fine.
Reporting, air quotes, reporting there.
Yes. And, anyone that is playing New World, definitely check out the official statement on that, because even though it's technically not their fault, they introduced a kind of workaround fix to help people in those situations. So if you are playing New World, just rest easy. You're probably fine. Yeah. But yeah,
I'm just giving you a little bit of a hard time because I thought it was fun.
You knew I was gonna just go crazy with that, but no, I'm worn out on the subject now.
Yeah,
thanks for the poke.
It seems like miraculously the issue has resolved itself, for if there was ever an issue to begin with. So I believe you are safe to play New World open beta or closed beta if you are so inclined to do so.
And if you do, you should jump on our Pantheon Plus Discord.
Oh, there you go.
So we can all play together and have some fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do. All right. Shall we hit the mailbox?
Let's hit the mailbox.
Mail on a Sunday? That's right. Let's check the mailbox. All right, mailbox time. So we got 3 questions, so we'll alternate again. We'll start with the first one from LaFale, and they said, we've discussed the rarity of items, such as weapons and armor for best in slot. Should the same apply to abilities and spells? Would you love to be one of the few wizards on the server with the ability to summon a devastating spell, or a paladin who can shower an area with radiant light that damages undead? Or do you consider abilities and spells part of the core gameplay mechanics and readily available to all? What do you think, Des?
Oh, man. So these are really fun because I actually try not to read these before we get on the air, just so you know. But I actually love this. So 2 examples. One, EQ2, which is a very linear kind of, you're not really particularly special because you get a certain spell, but you did actually have to, buy, they would call them apprentice, adept, expert, and master, and eventually they had like grandmaster, all this crazy stuff. But there was a progression with those spells, and admittedly, those master spells were pretty expensive. So, you felt kind of special if you had a lot of master spells. On the other side of this, which I think is more the direction, rubbing my hands here, that Pantheon might be going is they've already said some spells are going to be dropped. That's actually a thing. And I absolutely adore that. I hope for any kind of customization or, just even if it's chance stuff. I know a lot of people like the idea of I have a build and I'm just going to play the game until my build is complete. But I think the element of adventure where you will go off and do something special in a dangerous area, and you just happen to get a really cool spell that suits your particular play style, obviously, for your class as well. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't care if I have to camp something for hours, or even if it's a totally random drop, don't care. I love it. 100% for it.
Yeah, we're sharing a brain here on this one. I'm in the same boat. I think spells and abilities should function a lot like weapons and armor and items. You're not entitled to them. You get what you get out in the world. I mean, yes, you get core stuff. I mean, everybody, you don't want to have a class that, has nothing. You're going to get some core stuff.
Right.
But when you get past a certain threshold of skills and abilities, that's when they become something that you have to go out and actually get. And you might not get it. You might never, in quotes, but it might be hard for you to get that one spell you really, really want, whether because you can't get there because you're adventuring, you're not, you don't have the group for it, or maybe you can't afford it. I think it's great. I would love to see that be the way things are. And like you said, I think from what we've heard, that is the mentality that they're embracing. Of course, details yet to be seen, but that idea of dangerous areas equal great rewards. So
or now with the monk, there's probably going to be some particular combat art where a monk has to talk to every single Archai in the entire world of Terminus in order to learn the innate gift that we all possess.
I love it. Yeah, blazing hand punch, maybe that special mechanic skill. You gotta learn it from Beliaris, maybe. So who knows? We'll see.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you grab the next question?
All right. So we've got Random Rob here, and easy question: parlor games. Should Pantheon embrace them?
Yes, they should. Yes, there is no question. This is let's have some fun with this one. But what do you think of when you think of parlor games? What kind of things do you think of?
Simple games that are easy to learn that you can play with other people. That's how I think of it.
I agree. So I was thinking like darts. I'm thinking like what do I have in my parlor that I might have? So I would have like a dartboard. So I'm thinking like you could have like Darkmer darts, where it's just like you try and get as few points as possible because you're chucking them at the other Darkmer to try and because they're so like mournful and sad. You could, you could have like archive bowling, you know, where the balls are like these made of their husks, made of their shells, these glowing, you know how like bowling balls have like cool designs and swirls and stuff, like the archive bowling ball. Can you imagine what that would look like?
Oh my goodness,
I could go on and
dark,
on.
Eric.
Maybe that's what archive babies look
into
like.
A bowling ball.
Yeah, right, man. I'm gonna chop your head off and use your archive head as a bowling ball. I promise I won't do that, actually.
Oh, if you promise.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of games that I think of that have done similar things. But did you play Kingdom Come Deliverance?
Yes, briefly. I didn't get very far in it.
Oh, okay. So they have a like universal game, Farkle, which is a real life game, but they have it in the game, and it's very simple, very easy to learn. But it's got animations, it looks nice, and you can wager
Nice.
with it. And I have spent more time in that game, honest to God, playing Farkle
Really? Wow.
than I have playing through the story.
Well, that tells you something.
It's just something, and I would love to be able to do with friends. Just sit somewhere, or we've had dice rolls for a while. It's like, can't we just have a cool little mini game? I don't care. They could do it in an expansion or something. But yeah, any kind of little parlor games like that to do in your downtime, stuff that you'll see people doing in cities. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that kind of stuff fits in an MMO, especially a social MMO. Okay, last question from Walking Waste. They said consumables. How potent should they be in Pantheon? So foods, potions, poisons, tinctures, weapon coatings, that kind of thing. Where should they lie in terms of their, necessity or power levels? I think this ties in heavily to the emphasis on crafting that they put in. I think that with Nefel doing the crafting system, I think we can pretty much count on seeing things like this being relevant. You don't want to make them, so powerful that they're overwhelming, but you also don't want to make them trivial. So I like them but if you're going to go one way or the other, I would go more on the powerful side of thing, because I think it gives relevance to the crafting profession. What do you think?
Yeah. I agree with that point. For sure. I think it does give relevance. Like consumables have to help in some noticeable way. If food needs to be important, you have to notice if you're not eating. And when I say notice, I don't just mean like, oh, I hit for 98 instead of 100. I mean, you notice your effectiveness in a realistic way. And that could be food, that could be potions, poisons, that kind of a thing. There are plenty of games that have poisons for their, rogues or assassins or whatever. And you have that moment where you're like, wait, why am I not doing damage? Oh, forgot my poisons. Yeah, I like that. I think they should be pretty effective. I don't think that I don't like the idea of really short-term consumables, though.
Yeah.
Because I think that gets really
tedious,
cumbersome. Yeah. It's just a little bit like if I get a buff for like 10, 15 seconds that increases my crit rate by 2% or something, it's just going to be something that, raid guilds are going to be like, oh, if you don't click on these, all the time and put all your money into these consumables. Not a huge fan of that. I definitely am a huge fan of longer term consumables, though.
Right. Yep. Yeah, good point. Definitely agree with you there. All right. And that wraps up the mailbox. Sit back and relax. It's time for The Lore You Know. Okay, last week we started with the tale of Bel Iris, and we are going to carry on this week. So let's continue to learn about this Archai who forged a new path amongst her people. Yet on Terminus, the role of their servanthood took a dramatic turn. When none of the deities of the Erunamar could be sought out, the leaders of the diverse priestly orders convened and chose to turn over authority of their people to the very ones who had served them so long ago. The Atahane would rule their new home of Suroa as one undivided house. The practice of surrendering a child to the Adahane would likewise undergo a transition of sorts. No longer would parents of the Archai infants bequeath them merely out of need, but instead of honor and hope. Nearly 60 years ago, Bel Iris was one such child, given to the Adahane before her true birth. Despite the heavy cost they have placed on her shoulders, she's never lost the love for the way of the monks. She's known as the Mother Mage, yet cannot bear children of her own. She travels Terminus as much as any Archai, but her lone companions are a pair of prisms. The only warmth at night comes from fires lit by her own hands, and even the simple hope of a permanent home in Suroa is denied. Yet these sacrifices do not suffocate her joy. They merely kick it in the side. Here we need to pause, for to tell the tale fairly, we must abandon the name Bel Iris for a time. For in her early days, she had no such title. A student under the Adahane is simply called a child, and their relationship to each other that of siblings. For now, the girl will become Bel Iris will simply be referred to as the child. After the near defeat in the Deicide War, the Adahane considered several blind spots in their preparedness. Among the reforms that followed, it was decided that using the arcane as an offensive weapon in times of war would be a useful counterpart to their defensive tradition. At that time, there was no reputation of wizardry among the people, though they have always possessed the ability to grow stone and crystal. Yet the discipline could have failed on two sides, either too much wildness or not enough. If the Archai saw wizardry only as a necessary evil, it could end up as a loose thread on the floor, unspun from a tapestry to which it did not belong. Therefore, the Adahane chose to take the lead of fostering this new discipline, treating wizardry as a rare flower, fed from the richest soils Terminus could offer. Where other nations might train dozens and overwhelm with sheer numbers, the Archai would train one master according to their strident standards. This one would train two, these two would train four, and so forth. Thus, the core of Archai wizardry would use its narrow numbers as a strength, aligning the strict disciplines of a monk with the powerful wiles of a wizard. And that's the lore you know. Whew, all right, another one in the books, Des. What do you think? Good episode.
I think you are turning this podcast into an Archai haven, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, nice.
I'm here for it.
You showed up at the perfect moment. Right on, man. Yeah, no, it's
all these tales give me the feels, man. I love it. It just inspires me to really hone in my character for role playing and stuff like that. Gosh,
nice.
Love it.
Yeah, and that's what I get when I read JN's words, man. He is a master of evocative writing, and I've never read lore and had the emotion or the feeling that I get from reading his lore. So his words are magic in my mind for sure. So before we end the show, I'm going to give a little bit of a teaser. I was working on a new lore video this week. Speaking of lore, I was working on a new lore video this week that hoping to have done for early next week. That I hope you enjoy. It's all about the legendary weapons in Pantheon that are talked about in the lore. So if you read closely in a few places, there's actually a few named weapons that you can find that I'm going to do a little show and tell with. So hope you enjoy that. But Des, thanks for another great episode. I think we both had a very good time.
Oh yeah, it's always super fun.
Right on, and thank you to everybody who showed up for the premiere, and thank you to everybody who downloads the show on Pantheon, on Spotify, on iTunes, and everywhere else you can get your podcasts. Just remember to, if you like the video, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and we will see you next week.
See you next week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at DesrinDoes also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.